How you doing, good people? This is the 8-Bit Animal. Okay, so we're going to talk about another wrestling game today. And this one might be on that short list of about, 3 games, 4. That might be the better titles on the NES, the ones that you kind of should play and not those other ones that you should avoid. Yeah, but this one, it was published by FCI, who, for better or worse, has a really bad reputation because of their publishing of the infamous Zelda clone Highlight. Well, this title was developed by Nichibutsu and Pony Canyon, and is actually a port of a rebranded port of Superstar Pro Wrestling on the Famicom. Well, they changed most of the characters in Superstar Pro Wrestling, kept 2 in because they were also members of this organization, and re-released it in 1990 in the US. And today's game is World Championship Wrestling. Okay, now World Championship Wrestling was actually a game based around the National Wrestling Alliance, and World Championship Wrestling at that point was just a member territory of World Championship of the National Wrestling Alliance. See, back in the 80s, kids, wrestling organizations were territorial. You had different companies working in different regions, but this isn't a wrestling blog, so never mind. Well, this game features stars from the NWA, like Mike Rotunda, Dr. Death Steve Williams, Michael P.S. Hayes, Sting, Lex Luger, Ricky Steamboat, Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert, the Road Warriors, Hawk and Animal, who were also in Superstar Pro Wrestling, the Nature Boy Ric Flair, and Kevin the Animal Sullivan. Well, and I believe there may have been some other characters in there also. Rick Steiner was also in this game as well. But these different wrestlers compete against each other, and in the tournament, single player tournament mode, at the end of the game, you face off against a fictitious wrestler called the WCW Master, who bears a striking resemblance to Andre the Giant, with a mask on. So it's pretty par for the course with some of the other wrestling titles that were released on the NES at that point, like Tecmo World Wrestling, who had this fictitious weird wrestler who wasn't based on anyone as the final boss, as well as Great Puma in Pro Wrestling from Nintendo. One of the notable things that sets this game off from those was the fact that when you climb the ropes, climb the turnbuckle to jump off, the game switches to another camera angle. When you throw a wrestler out of the ring, the game switches to another camera angle. So there were multiple camera angles in this game, which was a first for NES wrestling games. There's also kind of a little bit of customization in this game, where you can select a move list for each wrestler when you select them to use from a set number of moves that are already laid out. You select four special grapple moves for that wrestler, and those are the moves that you'll use until you select another wrestler later on in the game, like if you lose a match or something like that. That gave this game a deeper feel than some of those other wrestling titles on the NES. And for what it's worth, this title, WCW Wrestling, might be on, like I said earlier, on that short list with Tecmo World Wrestling and Pro Wrestling as the top 3 titles on the NES, with WrestleMania Challenge being a really close fourth. Another interesting note about this game is that when it was being promoted by WCW in their catalogs, after the Road Warriors left WCW to join the WWF in 1990-91, around that time, they used a mock-up cover for the game featuring Sting, who was the face of WCW at that point. Now that doesn't actually exist. There were no copies of this game produced with that alternate cover. So if you're a weird collector of wrestling games, you shouldn't go looking for that because it's not a thing. As far as finding this game, you can find copies of it around. They're not ridiculously rare. And it's a wrestling game. Most wrestling games on the NES are fairly cheap, so you should pick it up. It's a solid game. I recommend it. This has been the 8-Bit Animal, and I'll catch you beautiful people tomorrow.